This is Jennifer Martinez, and I'm going to do my Psychology of Music presentation on music reading instruction. In the world of music education, a large emphasis is put on the ability for students to decode musical notation in order to perform by themselves or in a group. Despite this emphasis, many educators lack a true understanding of how to teach students to read music comprehensively. And in 2009, Gudmund Sodir said, methods in music reading instruction are mostly based on conventions, and when students fail to develop acceptable fluency in music reading, teaching, and teachers have little more than intuition to base their strategies on, which is what I thought was interesting. I think that it's important for us to really look into what the research says about how we can improve literacy. There's so much focus on literacy in schools in terms of how students read words, but I don't really feel like a lot of music teachers know specific strategies that they should use in order to make students be able to read music. So my questions were, what is music reading and how does the brain process musical notation? What hinders or improves a person's ability to read music? And what does the research say about how to most effectively teach music reading? And what skills should teachers work to improve to produce better music readers? So this is my lit review. First of all, what is music reading? It is the act of decoding the symbols of staff notation using a musical instrument. Sight reading is more specific, which is reading at first sight. Sight singing is even more complex because it relies upon the preformed internal auditory representation of pitches or pitch relations. So how does the brain process musical notation? There are multiple processes. Auditory, visual, spatial, and kinesthetic activations occur in coordination when wind players sight read music notation. From a cognitive perspective, music reading requires several simultaneous processes, including coding of visual information, motor responses, and visual motor integration. And also in music reading, the decoding itself entails the separate processes of reading pitch and timing, while these two must be integrated in the motor output. So I think part of the reason that so many people struggle not only to learn how to read music, but also how to teach people how to read music is because it is so complex, because you're combining timing, rhythm, and melody, so reading pitches at the same time, and you're using all three parts of your body. You're using the aural, you're using visual, and you're using your kinesthetic, and so your brain has to make connections in a way that's different when you just read words on a page. So the ability to read music. There is no correlation found between the ability to read music and performance ability, or the amount of musical instruction, the amount of musical practice, or the amount of sight reading practice that a person might have. There's no correlation that has been found in research. But the correlation that has been found is a positive correlation between the ability to play by ear and music reading abilities. So the other things that people have found are successful are things like chunking, which is where you process bits of information that is grouped into meaningful units. The size and length of the chunks depends on your musical expertise. Chunking is especially meaningful in music in regard to rhythmic and tonal patterns, such as chords, musical phrases, and tonality. So this is where Edwin Gordon comes in with his music learning theory. And there's the discrimination learning that he believes really is powerful, where in order for children to understand music, they must build a vocabulary of tonal and rhythm patterns comparable to a vocabulary of words and language. Most discrimination learning consists of students echoing tonal and rhythm patterns sung or chanted by the teacher. So you're building a vocabulary which allows students to chunk. Also, there's inference learning. Students are not taught by rote at this level. They make their own discoveries. As a result of their experience with familiar patterns at various levels of discrimination learning, students are able to identify, create with, and improvise unfamiliar patterns in inference learning. So this is tying back into the work at the top of the page by Mishra in 1998, where there was that positive correlation found between the ability to play by ear. So with Gordon's music learning theory, he is trying to build a vocabulary so that students are able to play by ear and trying to build both of those skills at the same time, which has been found to be effective in terms of improving a person's ability to read music. Also, what does the research say about how to effectively teach music reading? There was a study done in 2009 by Hayward and Gromko, where they basically looked at wind players from a medium-sized college in the Midwest, and they tested their sight reading abilities. In three different ways. They looked at their oral discrimination, they looked at their spatial visualization, and their proficiency, and they wanted to see if there was any correlation between the three. So when they were doing the tests, they did things like Gordon's I'm forgetting what it's called. The advanced measures of music audiation for the oral discrimination testing. They also did the Watkins-Farnham performance scale for the sight reading ability. And for the spatial visualization, they used the factor referenced cognitive tests. And so they tested 70 students on all of those three things. And their results supported their hypothesis that auditory, visual, spatial, and kinesthetic abilities affect or have a correlation with how well you are able to sight read music, which is interesting because again it supports that idea that in order to read music you have to have the kinesthetic spatial understanding, you have visualization, and also the oral understanding. Sloboda, his recommendations are skilled readers reconstruct in their heads what the music should sound like based on perceptual information. In the process, expectations and knowledge are integrated. What eventually feels for the performer like intuition and allows for quick and accurate guessing is really access to knowledge of styles, performance practice, and music theory. So essentially, from all of that, we need to expose our students to many styles and repertoire, so lots and lots of experiences with music of lots of different styles. And then also drawing their attention to form so that they can learn how to chunk form and patterns, cadences, all of those sorts of building blocks of music. So then back to what Gordon had to say. He believes in this sequence of listen, imitate, think, or in his terms, audiate, improvise, and then read and write. So really students shouldn't even attempt to read and write music notation until they're able to do all of those four things prior to that. So his focus is on patterns, primarily oral patterns, focusing on contrast, so same and different within music, essentially form, making sure that you always put the music in context, and then rhythmic movement that goes along so that they are connecting rhythm with the kinesthetic. What skills should teachers work to improve to better produce music readers? Well, Hayward and Gromko said they need to consciously connect oral spatial imagery for sound with performance on instruments, sing solfege and use hand signs, sing a melody before playing, clap, tap, and talk your rhythms, play from memory, play by ear, and improvise over chord progressions. We also need to teach form, total patterns, and rhythm patterns to train students to chunk information. And pitch identification and color coding of individual notes is not the most effective. Patterns are the most effective. Young students do not retain and apply global strategies when reading pitches, so speech cues are more effective. Again, backing up what Gordon had to say, it's not necessarily about can they read it at a young age, because they might not fully understand it and be able to comprehend what they're really what the music notation means in context. And then within rhythm, they do say that there's a combination of visual and oral strategies work. So using iconic notation can be effective when it comes to rhythm. And here are my references, and I hope you have a nice day. Thanks.